Great to see all of you folks who've joined. We've got Andrew from RetailNext, who's the Chief People Officer there. You will see a Q&A. So any questions that you might have, feel free to drop in your questions there. I might repeat myself in a second when more and more folks join, but Andrew, an intro from you would be awesome for the 27 folks that are here already.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Great to meet all of you. I'm Andrew Golden. I'm the Chief People Officer here at RetailNext. RetailNext, we do physical retail analytics, or for retail analytics for physical retail stores. So we created a sensor that helps retailers understand the environment within the retail store. I've been at RetailNext cumulatively for about 14 years. I started off as like our first in-house recruiter, and yeah, today doing all of the HR, IT, legal, and recruitment stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. And we have been working together since April last year, I believe.
Yep,
Almost
almost
coming
our
to a
1 year
year.
anniversary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, appreciate you joining. So, hey, everybody who joined, I'm Jeet, one of the co-founders of Kinfolk. And as I mentioned, we have been working with Andrew for a while, and Kinfolk has been part of a wider AI transformation, which Andrew has led, not only in HR but also in IT. So the intent behind this webinar was to get inside Andrew's head and see how he's kind of led that transformation across the business. So we'll dive right in. So I guess first things first, Andrew. Um, we'll spend 5 minutes on kind of why AI and why now. So we'd love to hear what kind of triggered that decision to take AI more seriously across HR and IT.
Yeah. So going back to, before we met, so going back all the way to 2024, I had left the business for about a year. I got to go work with my dad in his accounting firm, which was pretty cool. Started learning a bunch about AI, and then I came back to Retail Next right around the time we were going through and being purchased by private equity. And so, for those of you that have ever lived on the private equity side of the world, a lot of focus on profitability and a lot of focus on scalability. And if you know what those two things mean together, you have to do it without scaling headcount. And so I knew that there was going to be a mandate right away to figure out how we could possibly use AI, really company wide to be able to grow and scale and meet our profitability targets that were ahead of us. And I looked first in the mirror at HR and decided, why not have us be the first team that takes the leap in? And yeah, that's really where the journey began, is trying to figure out how we could grow and scale what we do. Assuming the company grows and scales to where it needs to, and HR is usually the last place they spend money for that growth. And um, so that's where it really started.
And and was there like a tipping point? Like at what point did you realize that kind of the existing support model wouldn't scale, or was it more like a proactive thing that you were doing?
No, definitely a combination. I mean, for any of you that run HR teams, right? People are constantly reaching out and asking questions. We have a help desk that we run. People are constantly reaching out, asking questions that, we've probably told them once before, or it's easy to find that information. And so there's just little signs of things where, we could do things a lot better. And in my mind, it was a lot easier to do it now than try to figure it out in the future when things were over in and over our heads. Already saw signs of it. There's a lot of manual ways that we were doing things. So there was a lot of opportunity in a lot of different areas, not just the help desk side of where I thought we would be able to use, AI to really make things better for us.
Because Kinfolk wasn't the only AI solution. You've also built some stuff internally, right? So it's part of a broader remit.
Yeah. Yeah. So early on, we didn't really know what to do. It was more the mandate from my side was like, let's just start trying a bunch of things and seeing what sticks. We were, vibe coding certain things. We had tried different, AI solutions. We had played around with Zapier. We had tried some internal chat bots that were built in some of our other tools. And it was just trying to figure out where would we get the most benefit, not only for us, but for our teams and the support that we give them. And we early on there were some cool things that we did, but we didn't find anything that we really fell in love with. And then I happened to hear a podcast with you, Jeet, and got introduced to Kinfolk, and everything really changed from there for us.
Nice. Podcasts is the way forward. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess if we're then zooming in on kind of the employee support piece, um, of all the different use cases within HR, what made you choose employee support? Was it like low hanging fruit? And also, what did employee support look like before you kind of considered a solution?
Yeah. So the reason we started there is at the time, and this is how I came across you, we were in another fad existing in the HR world, which was trying to operate people as a product, right? So we were very much in this mode of, what is the experience of working with us, working across our employee lifecycle, and the place where we, at the current moment, we're interacting the most with all of our employees was, through our help desk, through the questions that we get, through everything that they ask us. And so it was like a really enticing area where we could directly affect the employee experience and their ability to get things more quickly to make it was kind of a symbiotic relationship. We can make their lives better, we can make our lives better in return. And yeah, so it seemed like a great area to start. Also, I'm not trying to downplay it, but there is a lot of low hanging fruit that exists within the help desk world. Like I mentioned earlier, there's questions that we get where we'd roll our eyes and we're like, okay, we sent you an email about this 2 days ago, or there's the benefits document here we provided to you like a day ago, or there's this thing like all these things always exist, but yet, we still get inundated with this information. So we felt like there's an easier way to do that. And then yeah, around so sorry, the second question is around kinfolk.
So second question is more like let's shift a little bit. So let's talk about why you decided on let's say Slack first support, and that kind of goes back to what was it like before you then wanted
Yeah.
to move into Slack.
That was the question. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, so basic support, right? So we set up through, we use Jira internally. So through Jira, we'd set up a HR help desk, right? You would email HR at, it goes to this, goes to an inbox. We have a person that supports that. They triage the information, they go and do whatever on the back end, they supply the information back. I have, for all of my years of being in HR, have been a huge proponent of not making people use the HR tools that we have. So like when HRIS is trying to make you log in to do employee recognition there, or you have to do all the basic things you've always had to do PTO within a system. I've hated that HR's needed to add another system to do that on top of it. And so what we were trying to look for as we started looking for vendors is how could we more so in the flow of work provide all of that same support without people needing to leave where they are. And the majority of our company, or all of our company, frankly, lives and breathes and works within Slack every single day. And so that felt like a great place to start of maybe there's some way embedded into Slack where we can still provide all the support for all these different things that we do and a lot more instantaneously than we had previous.
And so I'm going to ask you a potentially spicy question because I think things have changed a little bit from 2025 to 2026. Whereas 2025 was we got to try some stuff. 2026 feels like where's the ROI? So did you have like a metric or something in mind? Like we're talking about employee behavior shift, but was there a metric in mind when you started looking for something like this, or not really? I know we do have it now, but I'm kind of curious to hear
Yeah,
what triggered it.
yeah. I mean, roughly, like I remember, and we'll talk about it here in a couple of minutes, but I remember a metric being like with everything HR does, like let's get 100% of people to use the tooling that we have and we'll therefore know successful. So I think that was it in my mind. It was like, let's find something that's going to have really high engagement and that'll be the perfect tool to have. So everything that I think we started shopping around was the idea of like, what is the thing that we think will get the most engagement? Because that was the way I was thinking about it at the time.
Gotcha. And getting them to not come to you or your team, or maybe even not create Jira tickets, presumably was the goal, and then reduce that down somehow.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. Yeah. So if we were to use a chatbot like you guys, the other ways that they would do it is, I didn't mention, the reaching out to a random person on my team to ask a question, the person they feel most comfortable with, and taking them out of the context of their work. So yeah, whatever we could do to move away from those two things into something else.
Nice. So thank you, anonymous attendee, and also Joe for putting in your questions. I will be keeping an eye on those, and folks who've joined a little bit later, please feel free to share your questions as we go along the way, and we're gonna try and make time for as many of them as possible. And we'll also leave some time at the end for any that we can't cover along the way. So Andrew, I guess another spicy question for you before we kind of take this further off. you mentioned some of those things around, hey, where do I find information here? But also, it sounds like some of the things are process led. So you actually just got to go and do work, which then leads to the obvious question of AI agents, which is the word that we see everywhere. So, like for you, what does agentic actually mean, and how does it play out?
Yeah. So when we first started working with you guys, we thought we knew what it was, but I think it's changed and morphed a lot. Basically where I am with like the agentic side of it is, you know, I always put this in like the real world context. So imagine you have to do something. So there's an input and then there's an output to do something with that, right? And so somebody brings you a question and you have to go to somebody else to get that information. And then you have to wait for that. You get that response and you send it back to that person. That's what I see as like an agent if you think about it in kind of like the machine thinking. So there's some input, there's something that needs to happen, and then you provide that output back. And so when we've started to think about agents, and I know we'll talk about this later, that's how we've thought about a lot of the work that we do, or what are these things where we have to input, maybe we're just a middleman or middle person to doing something else for somebody else.
Nice. So I'm gonna choose a question. Joe, so just Joe's saying we're constantly trying to run as many processes and actions in the tool. So rather than processes elsewhere in manual, unsecure ways, given the most recent AI steps forward, how do we balance in tool versus out of tool processes? Which is great, right? Which is a question that we also get, which is like, hey, we have these business processes running in a HiBob or a Workday or a UKG. What should live in Slack versus not? So how have you approached that, Andrew?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Like the way that I think about it are like the I guess like the table stakes of things where it's like it doesn't matter, I think, in my mind where it happens. If again, I've always been really against making people go into tools. Like I feel like the best example is like doing recognition in an HR tool. Like why would you make people go into your HR tool to give recognition when you could find a way in Slack or something more close? So the way we've started to think about it is what are those like, non like the things you wouldn't have to stress about. Like we haven't gotten quite into dealing with comp and things like that. We're going to start exploring that really soon, but we've done the easy things, right? So we've done, PTO. We've done a lot of, questions. We've done a lot of grabbing of reporting and information of, reporting structures and other things like that. So the baseline things where, if somebody could reasonably find the information on like LinkedIn, or if they did a quick Google search and figure it out, like probably wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I'm probably a little bit more liberal than most in like my opinions on it, but yeah, that's kind of been our approach. Is like we'll start with the easier things first.
Yeah, the where you have more freedom to potentially keep it unsecure, Joe, to use your words, and having it in Slack is fine. We also hear this from other customers and other teams who are saying, hey, well, actually, we have audits and therefore we need to keep those business processes in the HRIS. And actually, the more we talk to teams, what we see is that is a slice of the entire process. And there's still a lot of room, which is actually invisible work. So how do we capture some of those pieces and create an agent so that we can make those invisible pieces auditable and then keep the rest in your HRS to keep it SOC 2 compliant, as an example?
Yeah, and there's like a million little things that you can do before you start getting into like what I'd consider the scary, where you're dealing with like really sensitive data things, right?
Yeah, totally. Okay. Let's dive into how you rolled it out, which is actually a question that's kind of top of mind for a lot of people, is the change management piece. So, and we can talk openly and candidly about some of the things that went well and some of the things that didn't go so well and what you might do differently. But how did you
Yeah.
kind of decide where to start? And like so many agents, which workflows to move with first?
Yeah. So we did it terribly to start, and G, you can attest to this. I mean, we signed with you guys what? It was like April of last year. I think it took like a month-ish to, because I was doing it also took me a lot longer because I'm always behind on things, but to get all the information and data in. And so our original approach was let's just kind of take like a generic approach. So let's like use it. Our initial use case was for just basic Q&A, right? So all the questions that we thought AI could answer for us, like let's train it on all of our internal intranet and all of our documentation and the oft questions that we're constantly getting. We did a little bit of research and in hindsight, very rudimentary research and data into what were the questions we were previously getting. We tried to Canvas, our HR team, to figure out what they had been answering. And so the initial pass was, let's throw all of our data at it and let's just start telling people we have an AI chatbot that can answer your questions internally, and like let's just see what people ask and we'll go from there. And I will say, we launched like end of May, beginning of June ish, and for 3-ish months nothing really happened, to be honest. And I think it was like in September when you and I sat down and we're like, we need to like figure out something else, and we started applying more of a product mindset to it, which really changed. But yeah, the initial pass, you know we didn't know what we were really trying to do. Like I said, we wanted to get 100% engagement. So my thought was like, we'll just throw it out there and people see the value and they'll just start using it. But yeah, we were really, really, really wrong there.
So this is interesting, right? We were talking about metrics earlier. So when you're bringing in a solution or when you're thinking about building something yourself, like what's the metric that we're trying to move? And it sounded like we started with engagement, whereas actually, and I'm going to pose a leading question here, we're actually thinking about adoption. So how did you think about kind of the adoption versus engagement piece, and what does that mean in terms of like success of change management and AI implementation within the business?
Yeah, yeah. So I started to mention like you and I had a call in September, and you guys have been really supportive in helping us to sort of figure out how to make adoption happen, right? And so, initially, like engagement was the big thing because HR has always been about you build a system, you get 100% of people use it, great, you've done a good job. But the true measure was we wanted to really change. If like you remember me talking about a couple minutes ago, we had an existing infrastructure of people going to Jira and people reaching out to our HR people. So the idea went from 100% adoption, which my opinions over time have changed a lot about what makes AI successful. And I think, especially in this use case, like if 100% of your employees are using an AI chatbot, it's probably a really bad sign because you probably have really crappy documentation, or, people are really like confused on where to get things, or there could be a bunch of things. So what we more narrowly then started focusing on is like, let's start with something simple. Like we have people going to our HR help desk that we don't think should be going to our HR help desk. Let's see about converting those users from Jira to Kin. And so when you change that lens of how you think about the problem, it significantly changes how you start trying to build out, adopt, and market what this thing actually does. So that was a huge mindset shift in the first pass. And I honestly didn't come up with that. I think you honestly did. I'll take credit for it while we're on this call publicly. But yeah, we did that. So we went back through our HR help desk tickets for, I think it's like 3 or 4 months, and we said, okay, the baseline is we have X amount of tickets that are currently coming to the desk, and that takes up X amount of time for people. And like, let's just focus on taking those users and converting them to Kin. And that was our simple kind of like hypothesis. And if we were able to do that, we would significantly reduce like our help desk tickets.
Gotcha. So to the anonymous attendee's question, in terms of hearing how your team has moved away from people as a product approach or any learnings, it sounds like actually you haven't moved away from people as a product. If anything, you've behaved more as a product manager to look at the data and almost treat it as like cohorts of employees and how we shift them across.
Yeah, we've like quadrupled down on the people as a product. So yeah, and we'll start talking about some of like the little approaches, but thinking about it from like a user's perspective, and what's the experience of that user, and what's the behavior of that user now, and what's the behavior that you want to drive. So everything that we've been doing, and like, props to Kinfolk for really helping us with a lot of this, especially with an AI tool, because it's a very, like I said, the measure of AI systems, I think, is a lot different than traditional software. It's really kind of helped us to think, and we've gotten really minute with how we think about the behaviors that currently happen, the behaviors that we want to drive, and then what needs to happen to get from point A to point B. And that's where all of the, the magic sauce has to come in of, understanding that, building it the right way, driving it the right way, getting feedback on the users that still experience fail, like quote unquote failures, and what we're the behavior we're trying to drive, iterating on that, rebuilding it, marketing it again. And so we kind of go through this loop over and over and over to try to ultimately just drive the right behavior. But I think the product mindset as we think and work with AI is just one behavior today that's happening. What's the behavior or activities you really want to drive? And like that journey is where the product mindset or product, whatever you want to call it, really comes into play.
Nice. And then I think the other thing that's on people's minds are the title of the webinar, HR and IT. So
Yeah.
how does IT play into this when it came to adoption, or how did you think about rolling use cases out for IT too?
Yeah. So I'll take a step back because I think, talking about the agentic side of what we did on the HR side really ended up leading to then the IT side. So as I was just talking about, so we started with like the basic transfer of users from Jira into Kin, and then we did the same thing with our HRIS. And there's certain functionalities like PTO, checking org charts, other things like that, where we wanted to transfer those users. And so we're running marketing campaigns. And then we started looking more and more into our data. And one of the things that we noticed is we're a middleman for a lot of things. So, we like an easy example that I have is, we made the probably not smart decision to be penny wise and pound foolish over the years. And instead of having like one global payroll provider, we've just found local providers in every single country, and we kind of have automated how we manage them. But when there's questions, we've always been like the in between. So I'm sure all of you have gotten the question to like your help desk or directly to you. $3 more were taken out of my paycheck this month. Like, why did that happen? And then all the time that we spend going to hunt that down and figure that out takes a lot of time. So the thought was, okay, the experience, one sucks for us, probably isn't great for the employee because they're left hanging for a while. What if there's a way we can kind of like eliminate that telephone game and just connect people directly? So we were like, let's play around with the idea of, what if would the experience be better if we connected people directly to our payroll provider, for example, right? So we ran a couple of those and we tested in a couple of different countries. It ended up being really successful. And so the same idea then came. We're lucky enough that IT lives within we call it the work team at RetailNext, but our people team externally lives within our team. And they deal with a lot of the same stuff, right? It's like somebody reaches out for an account and they don't manage that account. It's our, sales operations team or a finance team or whatever. So there was a lot of easy, low hanging fruit, sort of IT concepts that matched what we were doing on the HR side. And then it really evolved because there's other things we could do, like, we get hardware requests that can be automated. We get requests to set up new accounts. We get requests to help fix something on like, so there's just a bunch of different things that had a lot of parallels to what we were looking at and dealing with on the HR side of things.
Nice. Okay, so HR led lens and then moving into IT use cases once you've driven up adoption.
Yeah, and very much like with all of it, if I haven't emphasized it enough, really kind of like a customer experience lens. So like we identify a pain point on our end, going like, this isn't great. And then we go and look, okay, like what's the customer experience and what they need to go through for that. And then as we build stuff, it's not building stuff to just make our lives easier. The thought is always, and this is really where the team's gone, is okay, this thing's not great. What are all the things that happen today? And then if we were to use AI, what are the ways that we can build that out to make their experience better, to make it go faster, to reduce our workload, to get them the answers more quickly? All of those things come into consideration as we're trying to build out the right things for people. And a lot of it's really driven by the data of what people approach us with to start. And, what are the things that are just, you have to go back and forth here, or you go there. And those are things where AI does a really good job, really kind of closing the gap.
So would love to then, this segues really nicely into the next piece, which is around the impact and kind of the operating model shift. And you've already kind of touched on a little bit of how the team is thinking differently. So maybe we kind of start there of how is the team working differently now compared to, let's say, October or September?
Yeah. So they want to turn everything into agents right now, which has been pretty cool. But we get a little solutions focused sometimes. But what I will say is like adopting the lens of trying to go, okay, this is the behavior today, and this is the behavior that we want to drive, has really been, I'd say if I'd had any big takeaway, it was like simply that mindset shift of thinking about how we measure and grow. So as it pertains then to the team, what we spend a lot of time talking about is like, okay, there's this thing that happens, right? Or that they're doing today. Like we'll use the IT because we built this out with you guys, I mean, like a week or two ago, and we just started using it. Like internally, people's laptops break, they spill coffee on them, whatever. People have to request hardware from us all the time, right? So there's a certain behavior that's happening today. And the behavior we want to drive is we want to get them new hardware as quickly as humanly possible so they can go and do their job. And today, It takes A, B, C, D, E, F, G because we didn't have tooling to do it. And so the mindset shift has been, okay, if this is the end goal and this is where we know what we need to drive, what are the things that we need to do to get from, A to B a lot more quickly? And so I think the mindset shift from the team has really been thinking from like one, what's the outcome that we're driving? Two, what's the experience that we're driving? And then three, if you put those things together, does it actually drive those things? And I think doing those things together has allowed us to build things that have helped us see real results really quick on what I consider super low hanging fruit. I don't think we've done anything really advanced yet, to be completely honest. But yet we've had like I think pretty amazing results for the lack of sophistication that has been involved with this.
So another potentially spicy question, right? That what you're talking about has led to, we know, a 50% deflection in Jira tickets that are coming through. So it's kind of increased the capacity of your team. And I think you're potentially also on a smaller team over the last few months and still maintaining the support level that you want to, with the mindset shift in the team already. When you're speaking with your exec team, your other leaders in the business, what do they care about? Do they care about the fact you have more capacity, the fact that you've deflected 50% of tickets? Like, how do you describe the value to them of the work that's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. We don't talk about it as much in like current state. Like, I mean, decreasing tickets 50%, like I presented that to the board. They're like, yeah, cool. Like, great,
Yeah.
nice, good job. And again, I mean, it is cool because like I feel like we've been ahead of the curve internally in our company. And I think we've been able to be sort of an example for others. Like our support team has just started rolling out their chatbot. And so we've been working with them heavily and actually coaching them, which, starts getting into more of like the people as a product stuff that we try to do more of. But I think for the exec team, it's really been, okay, we haven't done anything really sophisticated and we've reduced our load, by 50% on, both of our desks at this point. And it's just the jumping off piece to what's to come. And, the way I constantly talk about it is I don't know the exact ways yet, but I can imagine in a year from now, it's going to be doing much more and our capacity is going to is going to be much more to be able to do. So we talk a lot of future state of like, there wasn't like a dying problem where we couldn't survive day to day, but like now I feel very confident that we're set up. And I think my team would probably agree if like, let's say hypothetically, we have 50 employees join the company and HR can't grow one bit, like we're fine. And we don't have to stress about increased capacity and we'll probably only get better over time. So having a tool like Kinfolk has really been able to allow us to feel confident and scale long term. And like the cool part I really enjoyed that we did about it is doing it before it was a huge problem, like knowing that scale was going to be needed at some point. And we're in a place now where we've dealt with a lot of the baseline stuff, and now we can start getting into more of the complex stuff that'll save us even more time down the road.
Gotcha. So one more kind of question to poke at that a little bit. It sounds like you had executive buy-in from the beginning, because in reality, if it's not like a burning problem, you're being proactive and you're setting the foundations for growth. How would you advise others or recommend to others who may not have that same level of buy-in to, hey, let's actually get something in now before it becomes too much of a problem? Like, how do you approach that change?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had a unique position, but and I think the AI mandates become so much more this year than even it was this time last year, where I think I would hope most executives are kind of scared by not doing anything. And so that was kind of the approach we took, is like, well, if we don't do anything, then I'm going to come ask you for headcount and whatever. And I felt like I kind of had to take the leap. And I feel like we're in a different place now where we're kind of, and again, maybe not everybody's in this position, but like asking kind of for forgiveness later. And like the leap of faith I took is I said, we'll reduce the size of our team over time and we're not going to increase. And I bet the quality of work that we're going to do will get better. And I made that bet on us. And so gave me like fire to like want to do this better. But like, it is the honest truth. And a lot of other teams operate that way. And we've always kind of been the opposite, where we're like, we just need more. We need to buy this tool to do this and this tool to do this and this tool to do this, where it's like, I think this is now the time we can really be builders and we can build and do ourselves. So I guess in sum, my point being is like, I think everybody should take the risk and say, I want to try to figure out how to make AI work to make my team better, more so than like begging your boss to like add headcount, like commit something back to the business that you're going to do to, you know, help the thing do better, right? Because there's a lot of different ways you can slice it. You can slice capacity on your team. You can slice capacity for the different people on your team. You can slice like whatever processes you end up embedding this into, like annual reviews or performance or whatever. There's so many different ways that it not only saves you time, but the company time. That I think there's real risks to take that's really worth it to get a tool like this embedded, or just AI in general embedded into everything that you do, or as much of that you do. Yeah.
Nice. So I think this is touching on one of the questions from an anonymous attendee. Lauren, we are going to come to your question, but it sounds like, Andrew, what we're talking about is a lot of the transactional HR stuff so far. And yes, it's increased capacity so that you can possibly focus on more of the strategic elements. But more broadly, how are you approaching AI for strategic HR? If that's
Yeah.
appropriate.
Yeah, so I probably have a terrible answer for this, but I've changed my opinions on what I think strategic HR means a lot over the years. And like where I'm at with it today is the way I see, like the way we talk about it internally is strategic for us is being operationally embedded. So if we're able to do things that help teams directly, that make their work, their day-to-day work better, then we see that as being strategic more so than like putting together a performance or a engagement survey and coming up with all these macro concepts. So to answer the question as it pertains to AI, I think there's, and it's not necessarily just with help desk, but there's a million little things that you can do to use AI and automation to help make teams and their lives and their work better. And we've started to explore it in some of like the traditional HR ways, like performance and one-on-ones and things like that to make it better. But there's also a million things that it can do in helping to make the day-to-day of work better, right? And so we're lucky enough that we have IT, so we get to build a lot of automations for a lot of other teams and make their lives easier. So I don't know if that like fully answered the question, but as it comes to like Kinfolk, what we really want to start addressing is making more of like our HRBP practices systemic. So, there's certain like, to do a raise, right? Like there's certain, we've always had to be like the in between on that and double checking, but it's really just a set of rules. And like, if we can define and set those rules, we can then probably build agentic HR. So like, or agentic capability. So we don't need to be involved at all unless there's some, caveat to that process. So there are ways that we're going to use it in more sophisticated ways. And I think as you guys would talk about it, G probably more like tier 2, tier 3, sort of like more traditional HR stuff. But our goal is we're going to get out of all of the transactional HR stuff. And then we want to get all out of all of like the non-value add HRBP stuff, right? Where like, so we can spend more time helping the people in their day-to-day work, solve problems across the business, break down silos, all the things that I think really add strategic value to the business. So I guess in sum, the use of AI transactionally leads you to being able to be more, strategic from an HR perspective. But I don't know if you can like use AI to like, I don't know, come up with whatever macro thing you want to come up with. So I don't know if that was the right answer, but yeah.
Thanks, Andrew. And I guess that kind of touches on Lauren's question a little bit, which is, as you kind of think about the transactional all the way up to the strategic work, how are you building in the places where you will want human in the loop today?
Yeah. So we still do it, right? So like the example I just gave of like handing people off to like our payroll provider or our benefits providers or retirement providers, we still keep a human in the loop. So the way we have it set up, and I guess we could talk about it exactly how it works today. So they ping into Kin. So they say, hey, I need help. Kin looks for keywords. It says, do you want me to use my agentic abilities to connect you directly with, let's say, I don't know, ADP, who's your 401k provider, right? And then all you have to do is say yes. Kin's trained on the back end. It'll ask you a couple of questions to get some detail for you. And then it sends it off to ADP or whoever the provider is, right? What it will do though, is it leaves us on CC. So we can like make sure the thing moves along. But again, all the time that it has saved us from like not being the person that like gets the email, responds to the employee, gets the information, goes to ADP, waits a couple days, gets the information, tells the employee, they have a follow-up question, go back, like CC. So what we've done is we've just severely closed that loop, but we still stay to like, again, provide the best customer experience. We don't say AI, combine the two people and go off and do a thing. we've chosen very specific areas to keep people together, or keep people together, keep the human in the loop. So we make sure that the thing still happens because we can't control our providers. We don't know like how they're going to respond or not respond. So, we picked and chosen different areas where we think it's important. I think day-to-day questions, PTO requests, things like that. Once we know it works well, like we don't need to be there. We're not there already. Or
Yeah.
we've taken ourselves out of a lot of the approvals, and we've just chosen a lot of things that I think traditional HR people just need to let go of. Like you don't need to approve every PTO policy that comes through. You don't need to approve every letter you need to create. Like there's things that you can build in ways so it's not a catastrophe if it goes wrong. And that's how we really decided how to keep a human in the loop versus not.
How did you bring your team along in the journey? Because this is a pretty common thing that we see across other teams too, is where actually sometimes, and this is to Lauren's point, the team defaults to more human intervention because that's kind of been their behavior, and they're just super helpful people. So it's not only asking the employees to make a change in behavior, but also for your team to not have to intervene. So how did you kind of make that change internally?
Yeah, we built an AI on top of their Slack, so if they start responding, it reprimands. No, I'm just kidding. No, so like the approach that we took, it's everything's change management. So everything I've been talking about with everything we're doing today, everything's change management because behind even the things that we're building for our employees, there's a ton of communication that goes into it. There's a bunch of follow up because it doesn't work the first time. There's iteration, and so it's the same thing with the team. And we basically made a mandate internally that we were going to do this. I will say for like the kin stuff specifically, there's specific owners of that and driving that. And so I think initially with the teams that were running kinfolk daily, they probably came over sooner to wanting to do that. And then our other teams, we try to put other things on them that are more important. So, push the other things that aren't is back down to the team. And we've really tried to be intentional about how we structure internally within our team to make that happen. But there's no magic answer. It's just time and change management and, consistently talking about it and consistently, helping people to understand why and celebrating wins when you have them. And, my team, we run in sprints. So it's really cool. It's like we had one like a couple hours ago and we showed off like 2 or 3 new agents in there. And it's so like, it's every time they're just seeing these new things that are getting built and the time that it's saving the things that are happening. So it's just consistency and message, I think is probably there's no magic to it. It just, all this takes a while. AI transformation takes a while, both with your team and the teams that you're trying to get use it or to use it.
Gotcha. So give it time, manage expectations, and it sounds like have a champion within the team to be able to drive that change so that you're not the only one doing it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. For the team level, I will say though, like as we've rolled out Kin within our business, like using a product mindset's been really helpful in trying to understand. So we build something or we get a question, like let's say PTO is an easy one, right? We realize how many people are going into HiBob to do PTO. We decide on, we want to convert 50% of our users. We set some goal of behavior because we think it's going to save each person 4 minutes of time every time they submit a PTO request to do that. You do a marketing campaign, you roll it out, all the traditional things HR does. And then, but what we do, I feel like that's different that most traditional HR hasn't done is we then measure that, right? So we were just looking the other day and we were actually kind of disappointed and like we thought we had moved more people over from PTO than we had. So then what we've done is instead of just sending out another marketing campaign, the users that are still going back into HiBob to do their PTO, we started segmenting and we reach out to them and we ask them like, hey, a couple days ago you submitted PTO through Kin or through HiBob. Why didn't you do it through Kin? Is there a reason? Have you tried it before? So we start understanding and we understand the groups. Then the messaging is a little bit different the next time. And then so we start segmenting by the converted users that we're trying to have. So the change management, I mean, I guess you could still apply it internally to your team in a similar way, but the change management for the use of Kin for the things that we're trying to drive is also very intentional, and it takes a while and like it's very iterative. And we set up Slack workflows almost like weekly right now, reaching out to users, asking them like, we saw you did this. Why did you do this? What was your experience before? And trying to understand the actual behavior and experiences that they've gone through so we can rebuild those in different ways.
Nice. Okay, we are fast running out of time, so I'm going to pick up the next question that's come through, which is, what source did you find the most helpful for learning and teaching each other how to build agents? Because Kin isn't the only thing. You've been trying other stuff too. So what's been a really helpful resource, Andrew?
Besides you guys, when we have our calls to help us build this stuff out, I watch a lot of YouTube, to be honest. I've kind of like become a nerd with this. Like on the weekends, I like will sit. I have two young daughters, so like if I'm cooking them breakfast, I'll sit and watch like a YouTube video. And there's a lot of I don't know what LLM people are using, but like we use Claude internally, and they just launched a thing called Cowork. And so if any of you haven't used that, like go watch a quick YouTube video, and it's pretty easy to start, and like just find a YouTube video of like Claude Cowork and go do it. And I think ChatGPT has similar functionality, but yeah, just watch what one person does and then just ask the LLM for some ideas, and just go build something even if it doesn't work for what you need. Just build it to try it out, right?
Love it. Okay, folks, we got about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to move to kind of what's next for RetailNext and Andrew, and any advice that Andrew might have. So I guess, Andrew, straight to you. Where are you expanding AI next? Whether that's across HR or IT, transactional to strategic. How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, so we have some very aspirational plans, but the idea is going to be is we're actually shortly going to be combining our HR and our IT teams internally, and we're going to be calling it work operations. So instead of like it having two places to go, that same team's going to kind of manage everything. And the way that we view it is to make the work experience better, whether if it's for traditional HR stuff or if it's traditional IT stuff. And so there's a lot of like intersection in the ways that those things will work as we'll start to roll it out across the business. But um, we want to more holistically be able to support our employees. So we're spending a lot more time on like enablement around, tech and things like that. And we're going to be using a lot of AI to do that. Like I mentioned on the HR side before, we're going to try to be programmatically figuring out a lot of the HR traditional like HRBP work that we do to see if we can turn that more agentic. So we're going to start going from this like tier 0, tier 1 to more tier 2, tier 3. But I will say we're still spending a lot of time on, tier 0, tier 1 agents that we built out. And all those exercises that I just talked about is, we have a person that does all of our internal marketing, and we're measuring every time we do that, and we're, understanding from users. So we're constantly kind of doing both at the same time. So it's continuing to expand the base and then growing. And then I think the last thing that we're now really focused on is adoption was the big thing, or the next big thing for us, which folks have been spending a lot of time building out for us, is the accuracy of the AI. So we're literally tagging and flagging every single conversation that happens, so we understand how good we are in each of the different areas we're using AI. And that's going to be another huge focus for us, as well as being really good once we've converted users.
Nice. In the last 3 minutes, what's one mistake people leaders should avoid when rolling out AI, Andrew?
Don't focus on engagement. 100% engagement, especially for something like this, is not a good thing. Pick something that you want to change or behavior you want to drive. So don't try to just 100% adoption like we always do with everything. Okay. Don't do that.
And if someone's listening now who wants to start this quarter or even this month, what should they do first?
Go to www.kinfolk.com.
Or YouTube, by the sounds of things.
Yeah, or YouTube. No, I mean, even if you don't sign up for a chat tool, like go sign up for an LLM and just try to do something. Like Zapier has that really cool like when to try something and when, and like their first step is just try something, even if it's not useful for you or not helpful. Just try building anything, right? And Claude Cowork now exists. I think that's still part of their free package. I mean, there's a lot of little things you can play around with. Just do something, choose something, and you'll figure out what works and doesn't. But don't try to. I think perfection always gets in the way of progress with AI, and I think too many people are too focused on running the gamut. Don't do that. Pick the smallest thing and try it.
Nice. So we have 1 more minute left, and Andrew, I see you have a couple more questions. If people do want to follow up with you, and do you have those questions for you, where can they find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. Andrew Golden is my name. I don't know if there's like a chat function, but I don't know if you guys can drop like my LinkedIn, or we can send it out to the group after. But yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest way to get a hold with me. I typically respond within 4 to 6 weeks. No, I'm just kidding. I'll respond pretty quick, but yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to chat with anyone. And again, we've been through this journey, and I think as you've heard from us, we've made a lot of mistakes. So don't be scared to like just jump in and make mistakes. It's gonna happen.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Andrew. And thank you everybody for joining us. Last couple of questions there. If you did want to pick up with Andrew, you know where to find him. All right. Have a good day, everybody. Cheers,
Thank
Andrew.
you, G. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers. Take care.
Bye.